Welcome to the Friday edition of the Fun Astrology Podcast. Thomas Miller here. Thanks for joining us. As we mentioned yesterday, we're going to dip into another excerpt from Steve Forrest that I think is really cool and synchronistic, because yesterday we were talking about being aware of the synchronicities. And I thought about Uranus, and we talked about the sudden surprises of Uranus. So I thought, well, let's pull something from the Book of Air, which is titled The Art of Paying Attention. Now, if you don't know what we're talking about, I had the distinct privilege and pleasure of narrating Steve Forrest's Elements series to audiobooks. The Book of Fire, the Book of Earth, the Book of Air, and the Book of Water, in that order. Just shy of 2,000 pages of astrological knowledge and wisdom accumulated over the lifespan of Steve Forrest's work. He wrote the whole series during COVID, used that downtime to generate this legacy project. And it truly is, if you're serious about astrology, having this in your audiobook folder and on your shelf is basically just mandatory. And when you purchase these audiobooks, it helps support me to be able to provide this material for you. So I went to one of the most meaningful chapters of the whole nearly 2,000 pages that I got when I read it, when I narrated it, and that is the section on the Uranian life cycle. 84 years it takes Uranus to go around, as you will hear, and there are phases within that. This chapter was over an hour long. I obviously pulled just a few minutes to get you kind of started and thinking about it. But hopefully this will point you to the book and to refresh your memory of the critical points when Uranus hits those aspects as we go through life. And especially for you parents, no matter what age your kids are, but really especially if you're raising your kids now, this is invaluable to know not only Uranus, but Saturn and Jupiter and all of them as these transiting life theme aspects unfold. No better way to train your kids than to know when these will hit and how you prepare for them. Oh, and I almost forgot. I hear a lot of people say, I don't want an Audible subscription. Well, I don't either. I don't have one. You don't need one. But I'll tell you this, if you have an iPhone or an access to an Apple ID account, Apple Books has them as well. So I buy all of my audiobooks in Apple Books, and usually it's $1 or $2 cheaper. But if you buy it in Amazon or Audible, you don't need a subscription. You can have your whole library there. You just buy them individually. They make it confusing, but I have a ton of audiobooks in my account, and that's how it works. All right, now, here from the Book of Air, The Art of Paying Attention, from Steve Forrest. Uranus takes 84 years plus 1 week to make a circuit of the sun. And if you take care of yourself, it would not be too surprising if it took you a similar length of time to make the circuit from infancy to the end of your life. That simple symmetry between the Uranian orbital period and our own physical life cycle leads us directly to one of the most useful tools in astrology. Less familiar than the cycle of Saturn returns, which we explored in the Book of Earth, the four-cornered Uranian cycle is really just as important, not to mention a lot more fun to talk about. The Uranian cycle. Half of 84 is 42. That means that when Uranus is halfway around its orbit, in opposition aspect to its own natal position, in other words, we are 42 years old, more or less. The more or less part derives from the fact that the Uranian orbit is not a perfect circle. It is an ellipse, which means the planet goes a little faster when it is closer to the Sun and a little more slowly when it is further away. The effect is not very dramatic, but our age at the Uranian opposition varies a bit as a result. There is a generational oscillation that moves like a wave through the whole orbital cycle. One cohort of human beings might enter the Uranian opposition as early as age 38, while another group, born 42 years later, experiences it as late as age 44. You really have to look it up, in other words. Although, if you look it up for every one of the people with whom you went to grammar school, his or her age at the Uranian opposition will closely match your own, and that of everyone else in your graduating class. If you are not an astrologer, it of course wouldn't even cross your mind to look up the date of your Uranian opposition. But don't worry, it will get your attention anyway. It is one of the more impactful elements in the entire arsenal of astrological symbolism. One folkloric name for the Uranian opposition is the midlife crisis, although I promise we will explore it more deeply and respectfully, with less reliance on pop psychological cliches. Still, the cartoon version of a midlife crisis serves a helpful purpose for us. If you get the Uranian opposition wrong, sure enough, you will have one of those embarrassing midlife episodes like the ones that you see in television situation comedies. But get it right, and, well, listen on. 21 is a quarter of 84, so at approximately age 21, Uranus squares its natal position for the first time. It squares it again when it is 3/4 of the way around the Sun, at around age 63. As you might imagine, those two squares are significantly different in nature, even though both of them could be described as transiting Uranus square natal Uranus. We distinguish them from each other by naming the first one the waxing Uranian square and the second one the waning Uranian square. As with the Uranian opposition, they are both powerhouses of astrological meaning. They bowl you over, in other words. Again, because of the elliptical nature of the Uranian orbit, the age at which we experience these two transiting squares also varies, although not so dramatically as with the opposition. I've seen the waxing square happen as early as age 18, or as late as age 23. I've seen the waning square as early as age 61, or as late as age 64 or 65. For all of us, pretty much like clockwork, a Uranian return happens around our 84th birthdays, as Uranus comes home again. Some of us don't make it that far, but many of us do. It's worth waiting for, as you will learn in a few more pages.